Hey everybody, this is Jason Alba once again with the soft skills and professional development courses and topics that you'll find on Pluralsight. So we're just getting towards the end of April. It's the 24th of April. It's Friday. And during pandemic, Friday feels like, I don't know, Saturday, Monday, Wednesday, they all feel the same, right? Well, anyways, at the end of this month, free April will go away. But many of the Pluralsight authors have access to 30-day passes. So if you're interested in jumping on Pluralsight and seeing what it's all about, just reach out to me or reach out to another author and we should be able to hook you up with a 30-day pass. So today what we're going to talk about is, I think it's my second course that I did from after my dream job of like 10 months. And then the program got killed and the whole team got let go. But my first course, which we talked about yesterday, was Difficult Conversations, which was based on a book and a topic that everybody in the company just raved about. And that's what everybody wanted to talk about there, which is funny because I saw plenty of opportunities to have more difficult conversations than were being had. And to be honest, I saw repercussions of difficult conversations. I was actually one of them, where, you're going to be honest and raw and stuff like that. And it's like, hey, let's do this. Let's have this conversation. Nothing bad comes out of it. And then later on, you realize something bad actually came out of it. Today, we're going to talk about the other idea, which I'm super excited about, which is boosting innovation. And so this is actually two topics in one course. One is how to create an environment of innovation, how to be innovative, and or you have some kind of executive leadership position, or you run a team of a couple hundred people, whatever. The idea is, how do we create innovation and create an innovative environment and foster innovation? And also, what is our role as leaders? And as you know, in my courses, especially next week, we're going to talk about leadership on Monday and management on Tuesday. I think the main things that I want you to get out of the idea, the discussion, the conversation about leadership is that you are a leader. Okay, no matter what your role is, you might not have a leadership title, but you have leadership responsibilities in you, at least for your own role. Okay, stop asking your boss what you should do all the time, and stop wondering and second guessing. Take your career and your role by the reins and lead, even if you're just leading yourself. It's a long-term view at your career. A lot of times, I know when you're in a junior position, you walk into a situation and it's like, well, they're the boss. Like, they make all the decisions. It doesn't matter what I do or say. But the reality is 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, it will have mattered what you said. The leadership skills that you develop right now, no matter what your role is, those are muscles that you're building, and those will be put into use later. Hopefully people will see that, and that'll have an impact on the progression of your career. But also it'll just build you as a leader, and the opportunities will come. So 2 parts to this course. One is on innovation, one is on leadership. Let me jump over to, I'm going to skip this first module, which is buying into the benefits of innovation. It's only 7 minutes long, and I'll go into thinking like an innovative leader. So we have giving people space, really, like not just saying, I'm going to give you time to work on this. In my last role, we were building an extremely innovative product in a company that I'm going to say had a mature product. It wasn't like done, and it wasn't, I mean, there was still work to be done, and there was still a lot of market opportunity, and there was still product opportunity. But what we were creating was so different in that organization It was very innovative. And so what you had was a very refined organization with very refined and precise roles, and everybody understood their value, and running the operation had become a pretty smooth thing. And then you had like this little skunkworks team that was noisy and brainstorming and on the whiteboard all the time, and thinking about ideas and talking about them and interviewing people within the organization and interviewing people outside of the organization. And it was weird. Like, we didn't fit in very well. And one of the things, when you're creating a new product, you have to have space. You have to have time. You have to have the ability to think, which takes time and doesn't look like you're doing anything, right? You have to have the ability to try something and decide if you're going to keep trying it or if you're going to pull back and try something else. And so when I talk about giving people space, really, that's what I mean. I mean, you really need to, and for leaders, you need to create an environment where the people that are working in an innovative area are not sitting there thinking, am I going to lose my job? Like, if this fails in 2 or 3 months, or if I don't have anything to show for this, am I going to be in trouble, right? And so, so that was the very first module, and it's one of my favorite topics because as a leader, it's kind of the very opposite of micromanagement, right? And if you know exactly what the person needs to do, let's say, for example, you hire a ditch digger, okay? I need a hole right there that big. You can micromanage that. You can help them. Sometimes it's not helpful, sometimes it is, but you can help them figure out what the dimensions are and how far and how fast and how many scoops per minute and all this other stuff. But man, when you're talking about creating new products and innovating, it's just not, it doesn't work to micromanage. You know, it's like, okay, how many hours did you spend yesterday thinking? How many hours did you spend documenting? How many hours did you spend whiteboarding? How many hours did you spend interviewing? And it's like, you know what, today maybe that makes sense, but tomorrow I'm going to spend all my time thinking and it's not going to look like anything. By the way, one of the things that I talk about in the innovation, this is not just creating products, okay? So obviously when you're creating a new product, especially if it's like a completely new concept, that is innovative. That's what we consider like, oh, they're so smart, they're so innovative, they came up with something brand new. Innovation can simply be creating a new process in our daily work, right? And so I don't remember the book. I think it was a really old book from the 70s where we're talking about inventions and inventing. Anyways, this secretary figured something out where she changed something that had to do with the printers and the process that people used to print things. And it's like, I don't remember what it was. She saved like $10,000 a year, which back in the 70s was a lot of money. But the idea that the secretary, the lowly secretary, right? She wasn't necessarily hired for her brains to do new products or anything like that. But she was sitting at her desk and she's like, hey, there's gotta be a better way. There's gotta be a more efficient way that we could do this thing. That's innovation too. Innovation doesn't necessarily sit at the product management level or the UX level. It can be in anywhere in the organization. All right, supporting team members in innovation goes hand in hand with giving them space, preparing for hard work, because it might look like innovation is super fun and you're chatty and you're just like having a great time and it's a big party, but really you're making some really tough decisions on where am I going to invest my time? Where do we invest resources when it's time to start doing prototypes? How do I educate people on this? Like, there's really a lot of hard work that goes into innovation. I talk about creating accountability systems, figuring out how and when to pivot or terminate the path that you're on, or even the whole project. Talk about leadership, understanding the source of innovation, focus on ideas over implementation. So there's a certain stage when you're creating concepts and you're not necessarily thinking about how do I do this thing right now. So currently at an organization that I'm an investor in, we're talking about redoing the whole UX. And so I'm in these we have 2 meetings every week, and it's interesting to see the person who's been tasked to create the UX, a new UX and a new UI design and standard and all that stuff. And then there's someone on the very technical side, and I'm actually kind of in the middle, because it's like, you know, the conversation that I'm hearing is like, okay, here's the stuff that we want to do. And then the technical guy is like, okay, well, here's all our limitations, and here's our restrictions and our boundaries and our technologies, and here's all the considerations. And I raise my hand. I'm like, hey, wait a minute. The designer right now doesn't need to know about any of that, especially in today's world. There's so many ways to get around what might have been a design flaw or a design limitation 20 years ago. Let the designer focus on ideas and what the best long-term outcome and solution is, without thinking, am I going to get stuck here or here or here? Because I'll tell you what, I've been a developer and I've managed developers. Developers live for that. Show them what you want, but don't tell them how to do their job, right? And I don't want my designer to think, well, here's all these limitations that I got to work within. I want him to think, what is the best solution? Like, let's focus on the best ideas. And frankly, I'm just realizing I have something on in the background, so let me mute that. So frankly, the developer's like, oh, great, here's how we're good. Wait a minute, that doesn't work that way. Challenge accepted, right? Like, developers like to go in and figure out how to make the impossible happen. So there's a point where you do need to focus on implementation, or somebody needs to focus on implementation, but there has to be a stage where you allow ideas, I think it's called ideation, happen. All right, how to brainstorm with respect, recognizing the leader's role, eliminate urgency. This goes back to allowing space, because if everything is urgent, then you get stressed about, you know, my job and my paycheck. And maybe we're getting to the point where we're not letting the best thing happen because we now have an urgent deadline that we have to hit. And the deadline becomes more important than the outcome. Give team members ownership of ideas, allow mistakes, focus on confidence. One of the things under allow mistakes, and I can't remember if I put this in this course or not, but I remember reading this article about this company that has a room set up with pews from a church, right? Get this, imagine in your office building, there's a room with church pews. So weird. And so I think they have weekly meetings where they go into this room, and I think they call it the Church of Failure. I can't remember exactly. I don't remember the company or what exactly it was called, but people would get up, people would go into this meeting, and people would get up and say, okay, here's what I failed at this week. And they have created a culture where failure is okay and it's applauded. Now, why is that? Why would any company want to create a culture where failure is okay, right? And I love, by the way, I love this idea. There's a lot of reasons why that should be good. One of which is, if nobody's failing, then nobody's trying anything new, right? You're just doing stuff that you're confident in, you know how to do, et cetera, and you don't get innovation. You don't find new efficiencies and new systems and new processes unless you try something. And when you try something, you're going to fail. So the question is, as a leader, how do you treat those failures? Are people punished? Do they feel bad? Or are they applauded for actually trying something new? There's a lot of writing on this concept of applauding and using failure as a tool, and even how to fail well, like how to recognize when you're failing and pivot and all that stuff. All right, let me jump over to the next module. There's actually two main modules in this course, because the buying into the benefits of innovation is really short, and the summary and wrap up is really short. Thinking like an innovative leader and creating an innovative environment that boosts innovation, that's the meat of the course. All right, so creating an environment. Remember, this is for leaders. By the way, when I create these courses, what I want you to do is take these courses like a book club, right? Take my courses, have your colleagues watch them, and then take notes, and then go into a room, a meeting, maybe it's a lunch and learn or something, and beat it up. I want you to take my courses and discuss them and say, okay, Jason talks about this, and he uses this example, and he uses this word, and here's a great idea, and here's an idea I don't like at all. And this works for us, and this doesn't work for us. I love the idea that I'm not prescribing, I'm not telling you how to do everything. I'm giving you ideas so that you and your team and your leadership can go have the right conversations and create better whatever. Today, we're talking about innovative teams and innovation. Yesterday, we talked about difficult conversations. Whatever the topic is, I want you to beat it up and have a dialogue around it, and figure out how it best fits into your organization and your culture. All right, so creating an environment that boosts innovation, measuring the right things, creating a reward system based off of innovation. Now, this was really interesting because let's say that somebody on your team has become very innovative, and they've been allowed to be innovative because other people have taken parts of their responsibility. Or other people have contributed to their innovation, not in a big way as far as time goes, but maybe one person was just walking by the whiteboard and was like, hey, what about this? And then kept walking, and it's like, oh my gosh, that changes everything, right? So there are other people involved in this innovative process. And I think one of the messages that I want to share is make sure that your reward system is rewarding the right things. Are we rewarding outcomes, or are we rewarding progress in the system, in the process, right? Because if we're just rewarding outcomes, then we're not necessarily encouraging innovation, because innovation comes with a lot of failure. Maybe we need to reward failure, right? So, and maybe we need to reward people who aren't heads down, completely buried in innovation. We need to reward that person that walked by the whiteboard and had a really stupendous idea. And by the way, when I talk about rewards, I'm not saying that these are all monetary rewards or promotions or whatever. There's a concept of intrinsic rewards and extrinsic rewards. Extrinsic rewards are things like money and a raise and a bonus and something that costs money. Intrinsic rewards might be just calling somebody up in front of the company at a company meeting and saying, hey, Sally walked by and mentioned something and got us thinking on a completely different path, and that's why we've been successful in this. And that'll make Sally feel wonderful, usually. All right, innovation activities, things that you can do to foster and create innovative thinking. Innovation from travel. I think I talked about my trip where I went to Europe for 5 weeks with 3 teenagers, and we went to 7 countries, and it was amazing. Going to look at these buildings that are 1,000, 2,000 years old, and looking at the transportation system in Amsterdam with all these bicycles and bike systems and traffic lights for bikes, just for bikes. Thinking about how food is done, how restaurants happen, how you eat at a restaurant in Europe was different than how you eat in a restaurant in the US. I mean, there's a lot of similarities, but there are definitely differences. How you spend your leisure time. The rooms that we stayed in were smaller than what I'm used to, and how do they make use of the space, and what amenities do they feel are important? Just getting out of my normal and going somewhere completely different was so important for me as far as my innovative thinking. I have said that when I got my last job a couple years ago, I needed a change of scenery, and I did. I really needed a change of scenery, and seeing how that organization did things and how they built what they did and how they supported and how all that stuff was awesome for my innovation. All right. I'm not going to avoid this. I got to sneeze. Whew, sorry, I'm a loud sneezer, so hence the mute and move. Innovation discussions, innovation through simulations. I actually have been involved in youth simulations for a number of years, and I normally don't like role playing. I think role playing for my brain, it's like, all right, let's get rid of the fluffy philosophical stuff and like do this for real. Simulations, I've been involved in multi-day simulations, and they're amazing. I went into my first one not understanding or knowing anything that it was about. And then we got into it, and man, emotions were running high, and there was yelling and altercations and passion, and it was amazing. So simulations can be really, really powerful, and they can be a safe place to try things out. So anyways, talk about that. Innovation through debriefing, which I talk a lot about the debrief in a lot of my courses, and then post-mortems. How do we have a conversation and dissect it and figure out? It's kind of like taking debriefing to a different level. Cultivating open communication, get closer to the problems, meeting with customers. Those are two ideas that I absolutely love. You can have someone, for example, in the ivory tower who is like, hey, we have this great idea and here's what we should do. But if that person would just ask people who are closer to the problem, they might get a completely different answer. I love getting innovative ideas from people who are really close to the problem, because they usually understand the problem better. And a lot of times they've thought about what the problem is and how to fix the problem. Talk about cross-pollinating, which is getting ideas from different types and groups of people. Actively listening for problems because of my listening course. Innovation by example, encouraging open source patents, identify problems to focus on. So there's really quite a lot in these two middle modules, the thinking like an innovative leader and creating an environment that boosts innovation. This course was a lot of fun. When I was creating it, I thought about Slack and the Post-it notes, and I think penicillin was a mistake, right? So I could be wrong on a couple of those, but there's so many things that we have in today's world that are that somebody didn't necessarily set out to solve a problem or to solve it in this way, and then realized, oh wait, there's actually a really good use for this. This will fill some other needs. Let's move forward on it. And so anyways, there's a lot of cool things that can come out of creating an environment that fosters this type of innovation, which means we're going to have some failures. How do we reward that? How do we encourage people to continue to make mistakes, but learn from them and get smarter from them? So that's it. We are going into the weekend. Next week, I am talking on Monday and Tuesday about leadership and my Management 101 courses. These were two pivotal courses where I stopped doing courses on job search stuff, and I shifted over more to professional development and soft skills. So good stuff, fun stuff. We'll talk about it next week. Enjoy your weekend.